Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
I hate to be someone who digs through someone's failure, but it's crazy. We might just have seen one of the shortest Formula One careers ever. Flavio Briatore has brought out the axe, and Jack Doohan has been taken out for Franco Colapinto. A big story has broken in the world of Formula One. This was meant to be a Miami GP review, but then Flavio thought, okay, let's fix this episode as well. And there we are, now talking about Alpine today, live across multiple platforms. So for all of you, firstly, welcome along to the Inside Line F1 podcast. We are discussing this breaking news live with you, and we'd love to hear your questions and try to answer all of them for you, because we have a million questions, Kunal. Like, firstly, who has indeed gotten the shortest Formula One career in history? Sundaram, we were discussing this. Now's the time for the grand reveal. Who do you think it is?
I mean, all time?
Yeah. Replaced drivers, not drivers who've come in. Drivers, no, not as replacements, but just who've got a proper contract and then been chopped off.
It's quite difficult. The only names I can think of are Alex Rossi, maybe. He's barely done 5 races or so, but that's in recent history. But sure, if you go back into the 60s and 70s, there have been tons of drivers who've come in, paid only for a couple of races, and then have been chucked out for whatever reason, or for even performance reasons. But in recent history, these are the names that really come to mind.
Kunal, Yuji Ide, 4 race starts, 2006, remember?
Yes.
The OG GOAT, if you remember. 4 starts. And Doohan, as reported, gone at 6. It seems.
I actually did what all humans better be doing. Ask StatGPT. I mean, I call it that because that's what I think Sundaram should build, statgpt.com, for all his fantastic stats. But
there's already a StatGPT I've checked.
Yeah. I think it's Marco Apicella, 1993 Italian Grand Prix with Jordan. His career length was 1 corner, as ChatGPT says it. He was involved in a first corner collision and it had to retire immediately. He never raced again in Formula One, making his career the shortest of all times, also in race distance. But okay. But there is another driver called Tommy Bryn. I remember, he's Irish, if I remember. There's a beautiful biography of his written by Mark Hughes. 5 race entries, only 2 starts. Very successful before and after Formula One, just never made the cut in Formula One. And I think he crossed Ron Dennis, because I just recently read this book. Henning Isdal, the famous Norwegian motorsport commentator, gave it to me, loaned it to me to read it. But anyway, let me borrow it. But yeah, that's statgpt.com. That's what I got. Better ask AI these things.
Does anyone remember this name? Does this ring any bells? Marcus Winkelhock.
Yes, of course. The great 2007 European Grand Prix. The man who led the entire field in the wet.
Exactly. Unfortunately, he didn't finish the race, and that was his F1 career.
Oh, yeah. That's true. Or even Rio Haryanto, right, from 2016, and his funding.
I think he had the first half of the season.
I think first 3 or 4.
Half.
No, first 3 or 4 for sure.
He was replaced. No, he was there for the first half of the season. He was replaced by Esteban Ocon at the 2016 Belgian Grand Prix.
Too heavy, and I'm going to do what Donald Trump does, like too heavy, like too stat heavy. But Rio Haryanto, very interesting. He ran an SMS funding campaign. You could send an SMS and donate something to it. I love that because, we've seen this happen before. You sell larger, smaller stickers on your car for, lesser money to more people, raise money. But let's get serious. I know Doohan is getting jacked. That's what the title is. And I say serious because
that might sound wrong in some countries, but sure.
Whatever sounds right in Italian and in Australian. So we are not breaking the news. It's, of course, a big rumor right now. Alpine has not made a statement, but they will be making a change. In fact, just this morning on the Gearbox podcast, which is a fan code podcast, which also Soumil hosts, where 3 of us were literally there, we spoke the same thing. If Alpine is yet to make a driver change, or any team for that matter, you'd rather make it before the start of the triple header than after. I mean, unless you're Red Bull, where you just change a driver even between a race sometimes if they could. But yeah, so Jack Doohan is mostly supposed to be going. The rumor it could be that it has to be Franco Colapinto then. And Sarika is asking the first question: what really went wrong with Doohan? Was he really that bad? Wow. What do you guys think?
I think genuinely he wasn't that bad by old standards. Quite often he was a couple of tenths away from Gasly. This time in Miami, it's actually very harsh, but he outqualified Gasly for the very first time. Gasly, of course, had apparently suspension issues that were bugging him, but still, it shouldn't take away from what Doohan has done. But routinely, you could see that he was a couple of tenths away, sometimes a tenth and a half. Sometimes the difference was so small, and Gasly would go up to Q2 and Doohan would stay behind in Q1. And then you'd wonder, oh my God, Doohan has had such a terrible result. But maybe it was just a couple of hundreds or thousands at that point. And that's how competitive Formula One has become. Doohan, in any other generation, in my opinion, wouldn't have been that bad of a driver, honestly. He would actually quite rank decently on the scale. But remember, guys, this is the first time in history Formula One probably doesn't have even one single pay driver. All of them are there on merit. In a way.
But this is probably why.
Almost.
This is probably why Franco Colapinto is coming, because of what you just said, that we don't have a pay driver. Can we get a
No,
pay
no, no,
driver
no.
here?
We don't have a pay driver as such on the current grid before Franco Colapinto comes in, but because of a driver, everyone else gets paid in the team. But he who shall not be named. But yes, back to Franco.
But I'll tell you what, very interesting thing about pay drivers, and I'm going to go back to 2011 Indian Grand Prix. I was in the paddock with Force India, of course, with Peter Windsor actually, and we were discussing pay drivers. And he said, very interestingly, there are two kinds of pay drivers: people who pay money because there is a lack of talent somewhere, and then they just come and sort of compensate the talent with money, which is the traditional pay driver that we don't like. The second type of paid driver is the likes of Fernando Alonso or the likes of Checo Perez, where here's a driver, very interesting in his country. So you work with the driver and their management to go raise sponsors from that country. That's the kind of driver you want, because there is talent, and then also the driver's bringing in some money. And I actually heard the last triple header that the Colapinto money was drying up, and which is why Doohan, suddenly there was noise that he's going to get the full season. In fact, Oliver Oak said that, at the moment, Jack's a driver and we'll take each day as it comes. And they released a report, if you remember, a couple of weeks ago, saying he's going to get the full season. And Jack actually said, I'm so thankful to Alpine for taking the pressure off. So now all of this could have well been to put pressure on Colapinto, saying, hey, we're putting Doohan in the car the full season. Unless you bring more money, that could very well be the case. So it's probably not down to performance. It's just down to who's sort of paid more money. And maybe the Doohans also have paid money, truth be told.
Disclaimer, nothing against paid drivers, but the greatest of the sport also started off as a paid driver, Michael Schumacher, back in 1991. But then he let his talent and his skill do the talking. Flavio, he quickly swept him up to take him to Benetton. But nothing against paid drivers. And like Kunal said, yes, it's the money that's bringing Franco Colapinto in. But will the results really reflect that? We'll have to wait and see.
No, but I think there might be a bit of bias also, because we're forgetting how good Franco Colapinto really was in that Williams last year. Like, tied 4-4 with Alex Albon whenever they finished. And he was also out qualifying him a couple of times over those 11 races. And that speaks volumes. Colapinto is quite a driver. Maybe Alpine's complaints are partly to do with also how Doohan's been performing. Maybe he's not been bad, but the grid is so close that you can't afford that. And they want someone who can turn it on like electricity, like lightning, like Colapinto did last year. And that's what Abhishek is also reflecting, that huge damage bill that came off largely as a result of that crash in Suzuka and also in Australia wouldn't have helped Doohan's cause. And you're right, it's part of the budget cap, so you've got to account for it. And Alpine need the money badly, Kunal, because they're transitioning from their own power unit to Mercedes. And anywhere where they can invest in better aero or better processes or better tech, that's money that you can save up and perhaps do something with.
I mean, ultimately there are caps on everything. So if you keep earning more money, it's just going to the bottom line. So Alpine needing more money is, of course, our perception of how we see this money sort of fitting in. But the damage bill. Okay, let's break it down this way. Alpine is saying Doohan has damaged the car. There's a good chance Franco Colapinto could also damage the car. He,
He's done
had a
it.
great. He's done
He's
it,
He's
he's
right?
done
done
it.
it. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So, he had a great start to Williams and then sort of went a crash kiddish way, which is what a lot of drivers do, like Franz Tost said on our episode as well. And then Red Bull went away and didn't sign Franco, is apparently the rumor, right? Then let's look at performance. Okay. And I'm going to just open up some stats. Pierre Gasly, average qualifying performance, 11.33. Jack Doohan, 15.50. Now, to me, yes, okay, 15.50 is still just about out of Q1. Doohan has had no Q3 appearances, okay, and he in fact has had how many? He's in the 6 races. He's had 3 Q1 eliminations and 3 Q2 eliminations, okay. And Pierre Gasly on the other end has had 3 Q3 appearances, 1 Q2 elimination, and 2 Q1 eliminations, right? So it's honestly for somebody who is, I would say, just so new in the car. I think I wish he would have given more time. So this is what I
Yeah.
see has happened. Alpine has said maybe the performance is going to be the same with Franco. Are we just going to get more money with the Argentinian sponsors coming in, PR, etc.? So my my guess is it's more about the money because they wouldn't have signed somebody for 20 million, whatever, to say you're going to sit out for the rest of the season. So a lot of things have come in here at play. Could Jack Doohan be back in that Alpine car? What do you guys think? Let's assume it's happening. Let's
Mm,
assume Colapinto is in. Do you think Colapinto gets 6 races to prove and before they
Nah.
bring Jack back?
no
I
chance.
don't see this happening unless Jack Doohan can come back with a bigger check than Franco came in with, which I'm not sure if it's going to be happening. But like you said, I don't think so. It's really performance related. I think Alpine were just waiting for those sort of reasons to kind of chuck him out. And it started off with his first race in Austria. Australia, he crashed out on the opening lap. Then that massive bill from Japan, and then just bad qualifying. Which wasn't really Jack's fault in Miami, and the race. I think they were just waiting for these sort of reasons to kind of put it out there and say that we're checking you out. So, but very unfortunate for him.
And in Miami, SQ1, there was probably now, if you connect the dots, that Jack was told in Miami they're going to
Yeah,
make the change.
Yeah.
In SQ1, he actually said, "You guys knocked me out of Q1." So
yeah,
he's
it felt
also
so.
done his,
It felt so.
messaging and so on. And I I get this feeling he's not coming back, and it's unfortunate. Motorsport royalty in every way. Somil, you've been the voice of
Ah,
MotoGP in India. Mick Schumacher, motorsport royalty, didn't make it back, right? Of course, got a much
Oh
longer
God.
rope. Jack Doohan, again, motorsport royalty, probably not going to make it back. Come to think of it, Nikita Mazepin has had a longer career in Formula One
oof.
than Jack
I was
Doohan.
thinking of Nicholas Latifi as a good
Yeah.
comparison, but okay.
Wow. That is quite something. But it's happened again, Sundaram. Like we were always discussing, even in the world of cricket, the Gavaskar surname didn't quite turn out to be a very helping hand for the son. The Tendulkar surname, same story, just doesn't work out for the second generation as easily. I'm
But
not
those are
going into
more, but
why.
no, but those are actually more performance related. Here
That's
it's
true.
all different reasons altogether. Can be political, can be financial,
Well,
and all sorts of reasons. Motorsports is a lot more complex than everyone
who
imagines.
says that cricket is 100% clean either?
But yeah, let's not get into that discussion right now, please.
But do you guys think it was, yeah, there you go. Abhishek Ramesh is saying maybe it was all planned beforehand for PR, Jack getting in for his home leg, and then Franco GPs for the America. Well, the American races are, of course, a little far away, but yeah, this is probably planned before. They would have said, we'll give you some races. In fact, Somil, you said, right, in one of the early races in the year, we said 6 races. That's what he'll get before they actually make a change. So maybe
Yeah,
that was one more prediction that we got right on the Inside Line F1 podcast.
phenomenal. We're doing well with these kind of things. But he wasn't the first one out. That record still is with Liam Lawson. He was the first driver change of this year. So just like that, we've had two driver changes in the year already. So many different race winners. Oscar Piastri in his third season leading a world championship. Max Verstappen getting beaten by a youngster, and Lando Norris still staying behind Max Verstappen and struggling to pass him, but recovering to get second place. What sort of a crazy season are we living in? And this weekend, we also had Kimi Antonelli become the youngest pole sitter in Formula One history in any format. Hate that we have to attach it, but it's true. Wow. Where do we go from, Kunal? Because this has been a blockbuster weekend. We've launched albums. We've had crazy driver interviews. We've raced Legos as well. What a weekend Miami has been.
I'm that Lego race. My goodness, what a brand activation. And, of course, my first thing was like, oh, it's a two-seater F1 car. So the driver who actually gets, I would love to know how they decided it'll be Leclerc driving and not Hamilton. It'll be Gasly driving and not Stewart.
Don't
Maybe
stir
that
the
was
pot.
Actually,
Don't stir the
George
pot.
Russell stole it. He literally told Kimi that, oh, okay. No, actually not Russell. It was Carlos
Carlos
Sainz who
Sainz.
stole it. He stole it from Alex Albon. And he said, no, I'm the one driving, not you.
My contract
Very
says
smart.
that number one
Yeah.
driver.
But yeah, it was a fantastic activation. I loved it, and I saw the drivers were having fun. They were nudging each other. They were, smoke from tires, and at only 20 kilometers per hour. Formula One, here's proof: you do not need to be the fastest racing cars on the planet to entertain, to excite, to
Exactly.
bring in all those fans, and the kind of excitement that that Leco pulled out. I think it was a great racing weekend. Max Verstappen, he actually sacrificed his podium. If we were to assume what Lando Norris is saying, where Max was not smart and he gave up on a podium, he sacrificed his podium for Formula One's sake, because if it wasn't for Max going wheel to wheel, we would have had yet another race where there was no battle-ish for the lead of the race. So I'm so glad Max Verstappen, if you were to listen to and agree with Lando Norris, sacrificed a podium rather than sit behind the McLarens and just manage his race tires, because that's what you do when you're managing a race.
Yeah. And I find it interesting, Sundaram, that Oscar Piastri was still able to get past him twice. Like, it's amazing. Firstly, we saw that in Jeddah. Now here this weekend as well. Uh, Max Verstappen, sure, he may not have the fastest car, and we're seeing he's still the only one who can bring light to that Red Bull Racing garage when he got pole on Saturday. But two times, yes, Oscar Piastri has had the faster car that Redlingstein has been mentioning. But racecraft, the difference between Oscar and Lando later on, I mean, that turned out to be the difference. And that's where I believe the race was won for Oscar Piastri and lost for Lando Norris. And Max Verstappen has had such a big hand in deciding all of that.
Oh, absolutely. I actually rewatched the race, at least this first 20 odd laps, to see how the battle actually turned out between Oscar and Max. And in the entirety of Oscar and Max battling it out, Oscar at no point really seemed harrowed or flustered. But in the case of Lando, you did see that he went in for a move and he was pushed out or whatever. It felt that Lando was really trying to make it work, but he was really struggling with it in that regard. So Oscar in that sense seemed very calculated, and he knew what he was doing, and he wasn't really following Max's line as well. So that was exceptional to see, and it probably also goes to say that he's probably figured how to battle with Max Verstappen, and great usage of the rule book as well in Jeddah in the opening corner, and then also with Kimi Antonelli in the sprint opening corner. He knew how far ahead he really has to be, so that the corner is his, and then he gets to dictate how much space he needs to leave for the other driver. So in that regard, it's also very good that he knows how to play the rule book, and also now how to play Max Verstappen.
And Franz Doss said this, Kunal. He said this on the Inside Line F1 podcast, that the awareness that you need to be a world champion, that he described in Max Verstappen, those 5 stages, Piastri is there. And Franz Doss really rates Oscar's racecraft. It's true. And we're seeing that live in picture. Like as Sundaram Stat mentioned, first time in his career, he's won 3 races consistently on the trot. Unbelievable.
Single seater career.
Single seater career.
Single seater career.
Yeah, I think, of course, just going back to the comment from Redlingstein, that it's got nothing to do with Max. McLaren is a much faster car than any other team. That's true. DRS makes it easier as well. My point here would be that it's not about Oscar actually making the overtake, him being so calm. He actually said, I knew I would make the move. I knew I had the faster car. I just had to bide my time. He made sure Max was also using up his tires in that defensive move. And then if you see the difference between Oscar overtaking Max and Lando trying to overtake Max, even though Oscar took 14
Yeah.
laps and Lando took 4 laps, it just seemed that Oscar was far more confident making that move. Yes, it's a quicker car, and I think Formula One is more fun when a quicker car is stuck behind a slower car, and that's what we saw with the two McLarens. And I frankly loved what Max Verstappen did. Right, whether Oscar has figured him out or not, whether Lando will figure him out or not, Max Verstappen entertaining us rather than sitting in the wake of the McLarens and managing tires. That's what I tune into Formula One for. That's what we all love Formula One for. I've been getting a lot of rage tweets on Twitter saying, Max sacrificed a podium. Well, no, the podium was actually taken away from Max because of the virtual safety car, which is also what Abhishek Ramesh has just said, that it was the virtual safety car that cost Max the podium to George Russell. And there was a very interesting comment that I think Alexander Albon made. Okay, and I love his interviews. He said, for the first time in my career, I was able to see Max for the full race distance. He said, even in my Red Bull racing career, I never had a race when I was seeing Max full race distance. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is that's, of course, how much of a gap Max was behind the McLaren cars, as we know, 37, 39 odd seconds. But I think Max is definitely the reason why races are more interesting. He's putting that car in places it shouldn't go and then racing his heart out. And like I said on the Gearbox episode, this is the Max Verstappen. This is Formula Max Verstappen. If Max decides he wants to end the race 200 meters into the first corner and pick up a penalty, boom, it's finished. That's what we saw in Jeddah. There was no battle. But if Max decides he will race clean, he will race hard, he will make the drivers work for it. And he said, I had nothing to lose. I was just going and having fun. Now, if he decides to go and have fun, we actually get delivered this kind of fun. This is the kind of Formula One I grew up to. This is the kind of Formula One I want my kids to grow up to, my child to grow up to. But yeah, I have one, but I don't know why I said plot.
No, Max is definitely a hard racer, and I think the only way he would have been on the podium is him accepting and acknowledging the fact that, oh, okay, both McLarens are significantly quicker. Let me just let them go by so that I can preserve my tires and stay closer up to Lando Norris. I watched the race once again. After all that battling in the first 20 laps, Max's gap to Lando had ballooned to 8 seconds, and he was further 3 seconds ahead of Antonelli. The only way he was preserving his tires was letting both McLarens go and staying close up to Lando. And even if the VSC would have happened later on, which no one would have predicted at that point of time, is when he would have been on the podium. So I don't really agree to the fact that Max lost a podium because he was battling Lando or Oscar in the first 20 laps.
Yeah, it's just the VSC that ultimately caught him out.
Yep.
And that was that for Max Verstappen. But incredible to see him racing. I'm now curious about something else in the meantime, because while you guys were explaining that so well, I was just thinking there are so many moments we have missed in this race, and it's a good time to bring them out. And one of those key moments would be what's happened between Carlos Sainz and James Vowles regarding the Alex Albon passing. Not overtake, not passing. Come on, that was very, very poorly articulated. But over the overtake that Alex Albon made, apparently there were team orders that Albon refused to follow, and then he passed Carlos, and that turned out to be decisive because Carlos Sainz finished behind the Ferraris, and Alex Albon finished in P5, and that must have stung him. So on the radio after the race, Carlos Sainz was getting a radio message from James Vowles, and James Vowles said, Sundaram, that you're right, Carlos, we need proper rules of engagement next time. What could that be alluding to? What's going on here?
I mean, agreeing to what the pre-race plan was, because at that point of time, if they had agreed that someone beyond a particular period was ahead, they would get to keep the position and not really go and battle further ahead. And I think it really stung Sainz for two reasons. One, like you said, was Alex finished as high as P5. The second point was in the very last race, he actually aided Alex Albon against, who was it, Isaac Hajar, from, was it falling out of the points?
Yeah.
No, it was no. It was for ninth place.
P9,
But
But
yeah,
last
whatever.
place.
ninth
Yeah.
place.
Either way,
Yeah.
Yeah,
last few
yeah.
points always.
So knowing the fact that Sainz did actually played the team game and actually helped Alex get that one additional point compared to Isaac, he might have felt a little betrayed in that sense that he wasn't allowed to keep that position, and actually Alex went ahead without any warning in itself. So in that regard, I'm sure why he feels that way, which is I think very fair.
And my point is nothing has come out in the media after this, which I think is also
Yeah,
Yeah.
great that Williams is protecting what's happening. They're doing things behind closed doors because such kind of team orders being, you saw what happened with Ferrari. It was out at play. We'll talk about the Ferrari radio mess in a few minutes, but I just think it was one of those races. So Carlos Sainz, his race got damaged because of the virtual safety car and battling the Ferraris. He actually said, "I
yeah.
will not battle Charles." After qualifying. But Alexander Albon said, I am very eager to go battle the Ferraris. So maybe that was also the difference in the attitude of how they were approaching it, who I'm racing against and who I'm not. And maybe Alex just said, and we had, Alex's manager on the show, which, we'll release the episode in a few days, who said Alex has literally changed nothing in the offseason to tackle the Carlos Sainz challenge. Very insightful episode. You heard it here first. It's going to come out soon. But we should ask the question, was Williams genuinely quick? Or
They were.
yeah, they were, right? Or did they just have the luck of the draw? They were literally quick. They would have almost undercut even George Russell. So that's how lucky George Russell got, and that's how much bad luck, I would say uh, Carlos Sainz had. But we could take a second to just look at, that VSC that came out because of Oliver Behrman's power unit issue. There were so many drivers who actually benefited because of the VSC. Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Oscar Piastri, Liam Lawson, Lando Norris, George Russell. He had a 4.5 second pit stop. He was slow, but he still jumped Max Verstappen for third. Charles Leclerc as well. So there were so many drivers who basically got the benefit of that particular VSC. And, still sticking on to the VSC, a lot of drivers said if Max wouldn't have battled, he could have used the VSC to also pit. But the truth is, there were drivers around him. Kimi Antonelli, his race got messed up because he pitted a few laps just before the VSC.
Yeah.
Okay. And because he pitted, I think even the likes of Max Verstappen had to be pit so that they wouldn't get undercut. So it was just it's always strategy is always something barrel rolling onto you, and you just have to react most of the times. And then when a VSC or whatever comes, is just down to pure luck as well, right? Because we saw Lando Norris get lucky
Yeah.
in the sprint, we saw George Russell get lucky in the Grand Prix.
But that's an interesting comment. But what was Carl lost his mind doing there at the end to Lewis? Well, that's the matador spirit, isn't it? You go on right till the very end. And we saw that. That was good racing. It's generally been a race of good racing so far, Sundaram. I mean, it's
Oh
been pretty
yeah.
phenomenal. I mean, this circuit, as much as we criticize it, has great overtaking opportunities. Like that move of Lewis round the outside of Esteban
On
Ocon
Ocon.
that got denied first, and then the cutback later on. Great stuff.
There was actually some very good displays of good racing, like you said, Hamilton and Ocon, and I also think Sainz and Leclerc
Yeah.
leading out of the final corner, then going into the first corner. So there have been some very good displays of racing over here, wheel to wheel battles, and that is a good part of it. Unfortunately, not really the Lawson tagging Alonso Baton as well. But yeah, we that I think that's what really made the race enjoyable, and no one really expected it. People really criticized Miami for how it is, but it's given us very good wheel to wheel battles this time out.
And you've not heard this elsewhere, but this is, something that we discussed in the morning on the Inside Line F1 podcast is the tires are actually more robust this year because they've changed the construction,
Yeah.
given that cars are going quicker in 2025. And I believe these tires are actually done well. I mean, imagine those 18 laps Max went battling against those McLarens. When in the previous few eras of Formula One have we seen tires lasting 18 laps in battle? And even after 14 laps of chasing Max Verstappen, now this is of course down to McLaren. George Russell said the warmer it is, the better it is just for McLaren, right? They are good even in cooler conditions like, China and Suzuka, but the warmer it is, it just works for McLaren. But 14 laps of battling Max Verstappen and George Russell in 4 laps after that has pulled 8 seconds on Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. Okay, that's how good these tires are. So yes, we're
Yeah.
getting single stop races, but I believe they are allowing for good racing. The drivers are able to push. We saw that in Jeddah. Oscar Piastri got out of the car and said, "Actually, I need a sofa right now." Okay, now these are some of the most supremely fit athletes out there. And talking about how good the racing also was, the last lap actually decided positions 8th, ninth, 10th, and 11th. Lewis was 8th, and Carlos Sainz was ninth. I loved the move that Carlos Sainz put on Lewis. That's what you see in go-karts. You literally see somebody, making this late lap, last lap lunge. Lewis then realized, oh, I got to cover him. They nudged each other. They did not spin each other out. They, of course, touched, which is, of course, happens in Formula One, even though it's a non-contact sport. You always have contact. And then Yuki Tsunoda, who finished 10th, finished 5.2 seconds ahead. So even after the penalty was applied, he was 2 tenths ahead of Isaac Hadjar. And Yuki actually said, my old teammate was really pushing me in the last 10 laps to keep that 5 second gap. So the last four positions, or well, last three positions of the points, and hence then 11th as well, was settled literally on the last lap of the Miami Grand Prix. And why is Hamilton fighting Ocon again? Do we really have to go there, Prakrit? Do we really have to go there? The truth is, qualified out of position, and as he was closer to Esteban Ocon, and there we go. That's what's happening. Lewis has been battling the midfield drivers more, as we saw him battling Carlos Sainz the last few races as well, and now it was Esteban Ocon, who, by the way, also had some great defensive driving. And since we're just praising Max Verstappen, we should also praise Esteban Ocon, his arch rival, no, from Brazil.
Yeah, and just one point coming back to the tires, I think that's a very interesting point that you made there, Kunal, that the tires are actually that much more durable and robust, and you can actually push them to the limit. And that's where the trade-off is, because what Pirelli has been trying to do after looking at the first four races, they say, okay, let's go one step softer because we want to kind of nudge teams towards the two stop, because we want to see more strategy at play. We want to see more shuffling of the order. That's what they've been trying to do, but they've really not had that seen that happen, because tire degradation in general has been lower than expected. If the tires tend to degrade a lot quicker, then you do have a lot of two stoppers, but then you don't see a lot of teams or drivers pushing it because they know that the tires are going to fall off the cliff. This is where I think it makes sense that you kind of mandate not the stint lengths like how we saw in Qatar, but then kind of mandate that you have two stop strategies. So then you really know that drivers have to pit twice and they can push even a lot more, not really worrying about how long these tires last.
And that's why the races are so good. You see different phases of it. At the start of it, the medium tires were much quicker for the first 7 laps, but then later on, the way the hard compound tires came in, it was quite interesting to see. And there are so many other stories from this race that actually happened because of having good tires, because of having this good competitive racing atmosphere. And a big part of it was what went down with Ferrari, because Leclerc and Hamilton were on opposite strategies. Lewis had to start on the hards, Leclerc on the mediums. For a point after the VSC, we did feel that, yeah, maybe Hamilton's on the better strategy because his mediums look good. But then the way Leclerc came back, and then the team orders, and then the conversations, and then all the masala around it, we will get to that in a second. Sadhna has come up with a comment, which is, I do not understand how the Ferrari engineers have not figured out, let alone optimized their communication style and timing. It's How do we look at this, gents? Because it's a very tough situation, right? Because they're not native English speakers. Number one, it's their second language for people at Ferrari, and plus, Italian teams have always been more emotive in nature. That's, again, you can call it a general bias, but having seen how teams work from the inside, yes, of course, English has become a lot more common, but there's a sense to it. There's a feel to a different team. There's a different environment. Maybe it's all of that coming to the fore, Kunal.
Yeah, I think it's just down to the pressure. They're all feeling the pressure. The pressure is bringing in all these issues about coordination, sync in, what the driver should do. And, Lewis Hamilton, for the first time, all it took is 6 races for him to open things in public, saying, oh, Carlos is 1.4 seconds behind. Well, do you think I should let him through? And then he's reminding the team, I moved over in China. And by the time Lewis was allowed to go, his tires had run. And Frederick Vasseur actually offered a great explanation. He said we took one lap to assess whether it was Lewis's real pace or did the DRS just inflate Lewis's pace, which is fair. I mean, teams are allowed to take that time. But I guess it's just that when it's Ferrari and radio, it just gets a little more dramatic for all of us, given how we all react as well. And yeah, ultimately, I think it's just down to not having pace on Saturday. Hence, they qualify low. And then on Sunday, they can't unleash more race pace. And in fact, even on this Sunday, they finished 1 whole minute behind the McLarens, which
Yeah.
means also 40 seconds behind the Red Bulls and Mercedes cars, right?
1 second. We
So
need to let
it
that
was just
stat
they
breathe,
just didn't
Kunal.
have the pace. And I've actually had a few people asking, but what happened? McLaren was actually quicker through the slow speed stuff, and why not Ferrari? Because they usually have better traction and they do better through slow speed stuff like Monaco. Well, the truth is, just because you're quick in the slow speed stuff doesn't mean you're quick in the slow speed stuff at every circuit. You look at an average cornering range to optimize your setup for. So you make compromises in setup. So that's what happens. So it's not given that the Red Bull will always be the quickest in the high speed corners. Sometimes they will trade off the high speed to get better somewhere else, and so on. So it's circuit to circuit, and that's what's so beautiful about Formula One, that you almost have a different way how teams are extracting performance based on circuit requirements, package upgrades, and simulation tools.
We have to let that number sink in, though, Sundaram. 1 whole minute. What Kunal is saying is so true that Ferrari, just because they haven't been able to optimize their settings, are just this far behind. A lot of it is down to the ride height, and then being in the mid pack exacerbates everything, especially when you are in dirty air. But 1 whole minute, 1 whole minute is insane.
It is, and if you remember, it's a sprint weekend, and in the last sprint weekend, in the search for more downforce, Ferrari had a much lower floor setting, and they ended up getting disqualified. So I'm sure there must be some demons from China which they were trying to battle and ensure that it doesn't really come to that again. But we saw this in Australia, all this communication going back and forth with Lewis and the team, and it's kind of, you've seen it right now in Miami as well. The problems with Ferrari are more deep rooted than what people are talking about. Inherently, it's not just the car, but also the processes, the communication, and so much of pressure and so much of eyeballs on this team in general. Um, Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton had their worst qualifying of the season. Leclerc qualified 8th, Hamilton already qualified 12th to 13th. So that itself puts a lot of eyeballs, and there's sure a lot of pressure that comes with it as well. So all that frustration kind of just came to the fore on the radio. And although it might have taken them just one further lap to decide if we need to swap, it was just too much for Lewis at that point.
And Leclerc said post race, we know what the problem is. So they know
Yeah.
what's ailing them. We just may not be able to fix it, or it might take longer to fix it, or it's not as easy to fix it, of course. And Abhishek is saying, of course, you're on the
Yeah.
offset strategy, like
Yeah.
Lewis was on a softer tire. It should, be obvious to let him pass Charles immediately, etc. Yeah, it seems almost like a no-brainer. But let's remember, we're getting very critical about Ferrari, which is fine. But it was only last race in Jeddah where they ran a very good tire strategy with Leclerc, gave him a tire offset, which got him onto the podium as well. Okay, so I've always said this, that strategy can never replace lack of pace. As simple as that. They just knew they were slow, and you can't do any. Even Ross Brawn, the ultimate strategist, or Hannah Schmitz, strategy will never compensate for lack of pace. But there was another thing about Ferrari which bothered me, which I know that they gave the drivers some settings for reliability, but two power units, only of the customer teams of Ferrari failed. There was Oliver
Yeah.
Behrman, Haas Ferrari. There was Gabriel Bortoleto, Sauber Ferrari. So a bit of a surprise that, you know, I don't know when last did we see a power units fail this way, but that
Same.
happened. Hottest temperatures of the year, hottest track temperatures, and that sort of synchronizes with the fact that teams have to run better cooling solutions. But that's just what happened. There was another small thing which actually stood out for me, which was Red Bull Racing. Max Verstappen, spatial awareness. We've spoken of this. He came onto the radio saying George just lifted 90%. They went and they protested George Russell's podium. They told Max to be within 5 seconds, and the result of the protest was George lifted enough. Now, my understanding of that is The rules don't say how much you need to lift, which means race control decides if whether you lifted was enough or not. Somal, you could have lifted 12%, I could have lifted 14%, and Sundaram could have lifted 8%. And all of this is down to that human deciding whether it was enough or not. So like, I think George lifted 20% and was 30 kilometers per hour slower than previous lap and so on. Now, imagine you go and tell this to a Max Verstappen. What's he going to do the next race? He will say, I will lift 3%. I will say I lifted. The rules don't say that I have to lift X percent. I was 6 kilometers per hour slower than last time. You get where I'm going. It's a very gray area. Max
Please, let's not have rules for this. Please, let's not.
But what I worry for is, yes, teams and drivers will exploit this, but it makes the sport unsafe. It makes the sport unsafe for the marshals who volunteer to keep the sport safe, actually. So maybe this is an area they should clear up, that when there is a VSC, lift X percent of throttle, and everybody does that. I guess that's what
they've got to create a delta for that.
Yeah,
but that also varies from circuit to circuit, right?
Exactly. So then they've got to make a delta for that. Like they've got to create variable slowdown times.
But I think there is that.
They already do that.
Formula
for VSC. No, wait for.
But this was single waved yellows, right? Wasn't it? Was it not? Was it a VSC at that point?
Oh yeah, it was not a VSC. It was single wave yellow. Yes, that's correct. Yeah. It was a single
so there was no delta.
Yellow. So yeah, there was no delta. Yeah. That's correct. My apologies. Yes, I mistook that. But anyway, yeah. So that's what we'll expect people to do next time, which is, how do you misuse one more, loophole? But anyway, what's next?
That's why it's called Formula One. You have regulations for every single intricate thing.
Absolutely.
It's phenomenal. Okay, last 5 minutes of this episode before we have to head off. Let's actually answer a few more big questions, like the most impressive performers for you folks. This is a place where I'd like to bring in Kimi Antonelli because, yes, 1 second, hear me out.
No, you took my choice. Okay.
Oh, that way. Oh, yeah. Again, great minds think alike. Because, yes, you might have looked at the end results and gone, this guy's probably not had the best weekend. And then you watch the overtakes that have been put on him. That gets validated even further. But then look at the context of it all. This is such a tough Grand Prix for any driver. Sprint weekend, hot conditions, a tarmac type that he's not driven on before, a car he's getting used to. And in all of that, he's the one who actually has the potential to put it on pole in a sprint qualifying. It's unbelievable. It's the first glimmer of what Kimi Antonelli can actually become. And that, to me, in itself, Kunal, is a big thing. Like when Max Verstappen had his first year in 2015, whenever he had those standout moments, we were all on our feet like, wow, this guy at this age has this much. That's an achievement.
Absolutely. To get that sprint pole was fantastic. He won that pole while the others left time on that table. Low grip conditions. He just mastered that car. He was more comfortable in it than George Russell. Admittedly, George Russell, this is what he said. And Antonelli actually should have, he would have finished better, because what happened with him, like I said, is that he pitted just a few laps before that virtual safety car. And if somebody wants the number, I can tell you the virtual safety car was out on lap 29. Kimi Antonelli actually pitted on lap 26, as did Carlos Sainz as well.
And he had a long pit stop. He had 4.5 seconds of a pit stop.
Yeah.
That's correct. So I think Antonelli is your pick. My pick would be Max Verstappen. My goodness. Again, putting that car in places he doesn't deserve to be. Thank you, Max, for not driving, one of the McLaren drivers off, challenging the stewards and whatever else. And I would say he made Miami more entertaining than it would have otherwise been. So what beautiful piece of defensive driving. And for all the new fans of Formula One, DRS is not the way to go racing, okay? Because what we see, we don't want overtakes. We want the kind of battles that we saw. We want to see drivers going wheel to wheel. And that's what we saw. And thanks to Max, then, we, of course, didn't see papaya rules, because imagine if Max was managing, there would be papaya rules up front, like Sarika's also saying, on passing every very against papaya rules. Yes, agreed. Interfering later in the season, even if it favors Oscar Piastri, let's hope it doesn't come our way.
Yeah, hopefully. And today that problem was solved by McLaren themselves by having that issue on the first lap for Lando Norris. But his recovery drive was decent. Would you put him as your most impressive performer, Sundaram? Or does that go to someone else apart from Oscar? Who was your first choice?
No, my first choice was always Antonelli, and you explained it very well. And
Oh,
I
sorry,
feel
Antonelli, sorry.
and I feel even Oscar didn't really have the best of weekends, although he did win the race. He didn't. He's been a little scrappy. So as Lando, so I wouldn't say he was the most impressive performer. I think it's very difficult to look beyond Kimi Antonelli in what he did in the context of things this week. And I think every other driver have done well, but no one has really impressed me as much as Kimi.
Wow. So I think after Fernando Alonso retires, it's Andrea Kimi Antonelli who you're
No,
going to.
it's Oscar Piastri.
It's Oscar Piastri, who Abhishek says surely the driver of the day.
I
For
found
once,
an
driver of the day votes are now looking like they should go like not completely out of whack. One last word on Alonso, just how slow was the Aston Martin? There were three drivers who got lapped in the Miami Grand Prix. There was Hulkenberg, Alonso, and Stroll in that order. Fernando Alonso, the lead Aston Martin, was 19 seconds behind Sauber's Hulkenberg. There was a pause because you just realize they
Wow.
ran the same strategy. It's not that he did what he did. So if McLaren's pace advantage to the front was 0.7 seconds because of the water tire or tires in the water, which Zach Brown has that beautiful water bottle as well, which I'd love to get. So if McLaren's pace advantage is 0.7 to the rest of the field, I think it was 1.7 to Aston Martin. That's how crazy slow Aston Martin was. Yeah.
Unbelievable. And it would be silence on Sundaram's side, which is a good way to end.
Absolutely.
There's not
Absolutely.
more, not much more to say, my friend.
Not at all. Not at all. Looking at their downward trend has been heartbreaking. I mean, if you compare just the first six races of 2023, I think Fernando was on the podium in five of those races, and still last year was still better because I think he scored in all of those first six races, and now he's not even scored. So their downward trajectory is baffling, and it just makes my hope in 2026 kind of fade even more, because I know everyone's pinning their hopes on Adrian Newey, but then you really can't compensate for the internal processes or the lack of the team being able to bring in good upgrades to the car. He's not. It's Adrian Newey is not the magic pill. He'll make things better, surely, but then there's more to it. And the thing that really it probably goes to show that no matter how much money you pump in, no matter you have the best simulator, you have the best wind tunnel, ultimately it comes down to people, the person who's driving the car. If he has a front running car, he keeps making those mistakes, you're not going to win the championship. And if you have a decent car, and if you don't have people bringing in those upgrades, it's still not going to help. So you can have all the resources in the world, which Ferrari has had for several decades. They've still not won a drivers and a constructors championship since 2008. Can't compensate for that.
So true. We've
That's
got
my
to end
painful
this.
rant.
It's so true, and the others are actually agreeing to that whole idea. As Uttara is saying, the foundation for the whole season is here in the early picture, unless things get wild, and they are already getting wild for Aston Martin. And Sarika has already mentioned that you've chosen the next in line for Fernando Alonso. So you're selecting the air. But last comment from Abhishek. Firstly, great shout. First win for Oscar from outside the front row. And first non-podium finish from pole for Max when he had an incident-free race. Interesting. Yeah, he got shoved out a little bit this time.
And my favorite stat is Miami yet again chooses to give us a race winner outside of pole position and the front row. Oscar won it from fourth place. And like Abhishek is also saying, first win from outside of the front row for Oscar. Interesting.
Can I end this race, this stream on a little McLaren stat? Because I think
Oh,
quite
go for it.
deservedly they are the first team to actually take 100% of all points available in a sprint weekend. And I was actually pretty sure that Red Bull did it back in 2023, but they did not. Not Ferrari, not Mercedes, not Red Bull. Of
Ooh.
all teams, it was McLaren who scored 100% of all points available in a race weekend. That's crazy.
What?
So that's
So
1-2 in the sprint
one to in the
and
One,
race,
1-2
two.
in the race. Wow.
but no
Who got the
fastest lap
fastest lap?
point.
No, there is
No
no
fastest
fastest lap
lap.
anymore.
But
Yeah.
who got the fastest lap?
Hey,
I
is that the reason why Red Bull haven't quite
Does
done it
Lando
before?
as well? Does Lando as well? Yes, yes.
Oh wow.
I mean, they've not. I think Red Bull's not taken a 1-2 in the sprint and in the race. They've come 1-3. But yeah, crazy.
That's insane. Wow, okay. What a bombshell to end on. This is the kind of crazy stuff you can expect on the Inside Line F1 podcast. If you loved it, which I know you have, and that we know from the fact that you've put in so many incredible comments and have reacted so well to this video, we will see you soon. And to make sure that you're updated with what we do, just click on the bell notification when you subscribe to us, and also make sure to like, share, and do the other good stuff. Thank you for watching, everyone. Doohan is out. We should be heading out as well. Bye bye.